Chapter 60th, Detective. The understanding that a child is not only a mother, but also a father, began with my first constellation session where I had to place him. My request was about inability to accept myself. Such anger opened up in me toward him. I was surprised. I was 25 then. 25. And for the first time, I allowed myself to be angry at a person I didn't even know, at an empty space in my biography, at a hole my grandmother had papered over with a fake patronymic and silence. The topic of my father was never raised in our home. I didn't know that my surname and patronymic had been changed by my mother when I was 2. The word was never even spoken in our house. I have very faint memories from around age 2 of being called names. Tatarva, a slur for Tatar people, Vera Rivkatovna, and Satarova. But the memories are so faint I don't trust them. I am Vera Vladimirovna, not Satarova, according to my duplicate birth certificate and passport. Grandmother's surname, plus a patronymic from who knows whom. Just sounds nice with the first name. And there's no one left to ask. No relatives have been alive for a long time, and there were barely any to begin with. After the constellation session, I began searching for my father. Found someone, got inspired, but it turned out it wasn't him. And how could I know for sure? I didn't know his full name or date of birth. I searched approximately by surname through social media. That first search attempt was 7 years ago. I dropped it for a while. Then after the move to Canada, I unexpectedly learned from my 75-year-old grandfather that my mother and father had been briefly married. Grandpa's old, could have mixed things up. But I got hope. A marriage registration is a lead. I hired a detective remotely from Canada. He took the money and dragged it out for a long time, about 6 months. What I went through during those 6 months waiting for news. That I'd find my father today and he died yesterday. Such pain and guilt. That I'd find him and he doesn't want to know me. Fear. That I'd never find him and would live in uncertainty my whole life. Despair. And I so wanted clarity. It's such a natural desire to know your parents. The detective scammed me, disappeared with the money, and no search results. The feeling of betrayal was also bitter. I so wanted to do everything in my power. I survived the pain and hired another detective through a connection. He found the information in 3 days. Hooray! Satarov Rivkat Rafikovich, born January 25th, 1962. Waiting for details. First, euphoria, tears of joy. 2 minutes later, a WhatsApp message. I'm afraid to disappoint you. According to this data, he's not in the passport database. Either he left Kazakhstan or he's no longer alive. Tears of such despair. After some time, I received more news from the second detective about my father. They found his brother, who is paralyzed and can't speak. Spoke with the brother's wife, Alyona. My father died about 9 years ago, the same year as my mother, from alcoholism. It turns out I have 2 half-sisters from different marriages. All 3, including me, grew up without a father. Grief washes over me, and such a trembling of the heart that I barely coped. This Alyona was so warm toward me, unexpectedly so. She gave me the contact of the only surviving sister of my father, an aunt. The next day I called this aunt. The aunt was cold, said she'd never heard of Rivkat having a daughter with a girl who was in prison. Said Rivkat only had 1 marriage, that he met his wife on a train. There was 1 daughter with whom they never maintained contact, and that's definitely not me. Oh, right. My mother and father met not on a train but at the zone, in prison, where my mother at 22 was serving her sentence, and he was a warrant officer, basically a guard. I went through such swings in those 2 days, mourning a biological father, and then the realization that it was all a farce and it wasn't him. My heart clenched and dropped. It's all a coincidence and he's not my father. I can't even describe that feeling. The only lead, the aunt, confirmed that her brother Rifkat was also a warrant officer at the Karaganda prison, where I flew at age 5 with my grandmother to visit my mother, who was serving time for the second time. I called Alyona, retold what the aunt said about not knowing me. Alyona suddenly started remembering how Rifkat brought me to her to babysit, which she hadn't mentioned in the previous conversation. When I was 6 months old and Rifkat and my mother lived with Rifkat's parents, my grandfather had told me about this. At least something matches. Alyona, Rifkat often came drunk at night and wanted to take you, but I wouldn't let him. What if he dropped you? And where was my mother at that time? Oh, they partied and drank separately, fought a lot, and split up. Disappointment that he was the same as my mother, not ready for children, young, coped with problems through alcohol. I so hoped for a happy ending. That's it. The story ends there. No photos of my father, no solid proof he's my father. How can you trust a woman who even confuses brothers' names in conversation and the number of daughters? No clarity whatsoever. I don't have 2 sisters, Alyona confused it with another of my father's brothers, but just one in Russia, and even her name is unknown. And I seriously doubt Alyona's information. Why was all of this for? Friends ask me, why the hell are you even looking for your father? You have a husband and a son. I think it's such a natural desire to know your parents that I'm almost offended that my closest friends don't understand asking such a question. Maybe it's just biology, who knows? I have no rational explanation for why I searched. I only know that I will never talk to even one of my parents. He will never say, "We wanted you. You were so important to us." Words I say to my son almost every day. Words I so want to hear myself. I will never learn that he became a worthy person, and that abandoning me, a baby, was just a youthful mistake. And he repents, and he achieved a lot. I will never be able to tell him what I achieved, so he could be proud of me. I will never be able to say Dad or my father. I will never know what he was like when young, what his personality was, how they met with my mother, and what drew him to her. What could I have needed this experience for? To be able to understand others, even in their hardest youthful mistakes. To be able to understand self-rejection and share how to get out and find yourself. To be able to value life just because, without any given circumstances, life as it is, imperfect. To be able to love yourself without an example, with all your heart as best you can, and through this experience, to love others. My story didn't end there, as it turned out. I'm adding to it 2 weeks later. What happened the day I wrote this story? I read it about 20 times until I could read it without tears, especially the ending. I felt lighter, I exhaled, and decided to share the story with my closest friends on WhatsApp. By a lucky coincidence, I accidentally sent the story to a distant relative on my mother's side. I received a reply 10 minutes later. Vera, hi. Why did you waste your nerves, money, and time searching for your father? Couldn't you ask relatives about it? For example, me? Your mother and I were only 4 years apart in age. She was older than me, and that's why we communicated more than anyone else. I'll tell you that the person in the photo was never your father. They met when you already existed, and lived together only a few months, and you were born to a man who lived, and maybe still lives, on Krylova Street. His name really is Vladimir. Your patronymic is real, but I don't remember his last name. A soap opera, like the children of Captain Grant, who sailed nearby the whole time but in the wrong direction. I sat in silence for 15 minutes. No words. My husband thought someone had died. The patronymic is real. Vladimirovna. Not sounds nice with the first name, but real. I went to sleep because feeling emotions that day was physically beyond me. I felt emotional exhaustion. Familiar. The same as after grandmother's beatings in childhood, when the body simply shut down. Not from tiredness, but from overload, from the impossibility of fitting in one more thing. And I woke up, strangely, a happy person, literally an order of magnitude happier than before. It let go. I don't want to search for Vladimir, and I'm not going to. I don't feel the need. It became unimportant to me how all of this happened and why things worked out this way. In my body, there's this feeling of, it's neither bad nor good. These things happen. Specifically, not a thought, but a state in the body that appears when I think about my father, a quiet happiness and a smile, warmth in the soul. At first, my brain worried that this state of non-judgment would pass. This only happens to enlightened people, I thought. Turns out ordinary people can access it too. Apparently, it appears when a person gets tired of suffering. 2 weeks passed, and every time I remember my father, my heart feels warm. I smile. Now I know how a completed gestalt feels. The situation hasn't changed, but the person feels good. Adding to this 4 months later, because the saga continues. I closed my gestalt 4 months ago, but fate offered me to finish closing it today. I received a message from Aunt Larissa. My father Vladimir knew about me the whole time and lived in the same building as me. Found your biological father. He lives on Krylova. His last name is Panchishko Vladimir, born 1963. He's paralyzed. You have a brother and a sister. We talked on the phone. She told me my grandmother was against him seeing me. He was on drugs like my mother, and both were persona non grata. Larissa remembers how my grandmother often mentioned the biological father's last name in conversation. Vera is the spitting image of Pancha. Such a wave of anger and tears rose in me. Why did grandmother interfere at all? I lost so many years not knowing my father. I have the right to know my parents by the right of my birth. An outraged voice sounded in my head. A childlike voice, practically a toddler tantrum. The part that lived 30 years without the word dad, and suddenly learned that dad lived in the next building. I'm sitting in a cafe sobbing. Immediately, the part of me that desperately and fruitlessly strives toward enlightenment started lecturing. Grandmother surely had good intentions. People always have good intentions, and who knows who you'd have become if you'd found out earlier. To which my ordinary human part told that enlightened voice to fuck off and simply continued crying and being angry at grandmother. Grandmother was protecting. I understand this now. With my head, she was protecting from a drug addict, from an alcoholic, from a person who couldn't raise a child. She protected the only way she knew, by cutting off. Half an hour later, having calmed down, I called my father. "Hello, I'm Vera." His first words, "Well, don't be too hard on me. We were young." I hadn't even been thinking that. I'm still just curious what they were like young, what his personality was, how they met with my mother, and what drew him to her, and photos, of course, to see, whether I'm the spitting image of Pancha, and I also want to meet my brother and sister. I still can't quite believe all of this is happening to me, that the inner voice that guided me, and one day, having heard the story of Olga Valyaeva, said, "Oh, Valyaeva found her father. You'll find yours too. Go, search," that the voice was right. This is how this person inside me always worked. sees that something is possible for another, takes it as a benchmark for herself. We agreed to video call with Vladimir the next day, and so we talked. The search process turned out more exciting than the result. Already during the conversation, I felt disappointment and sadness. What is there to be disappointed about if there were no expectations to begin with? Turns out, deep in my little girl's heart, there were expectations after all. She wanted a miracle and a hero father. At least in something, she wants to be proud of him. Here's the story Vladimir told me. They went to school together, slept together a couple of times after doing time. They were both 22. Nothing serious, just knew each other since childhood. My grandmother initially insisted on an abortion because he'd just gotten out of prison, like my mother, was on drugs and drinking. But the term was late. My mother was afraid to tell grandmother and hid it until the last moment. My grandmother forbade him from seeing me, and he complied. After me, he had another daughter from another woman who kicked him out while still pregnant. He saw his daughter only a couple of times. Then her mother forbade it, like my grandmother, so he didn't try. Well, if they don't want to be family, then fine. What can I do? Then he had a son from yet another woman who provided for him, got him drunk. It sounded like she was almost force-feeding him alcohol, but didn't want to move to his city. He left, abandoned them. Doesn't know his son either. 3 children. All 3 grew up without him, as if someone carefully copied the same script 3 times, and each time the father vanished, didn't leave, dissolved. In all these stories, a common pattern. Others were to blame. The system in Kazakhstan, where they could lock you up for anything. Women who didn't want to. Grandmother who forbade. He's not a bad father, just unlucky. That's how he explained it to himself. And in that explanation, I heard not audacity, but a defense mechanism of a person who can't bear the truth about his own inaction. If everyone around is to blame, then he couldn't have changed anything. Then you can live on and not wake up from shame. He's 54 now, lived his entire life with his mother, in his mother's apartment, got himself a second group disability certificate, a government disability designation in post-Soviet countries, when he was still young and never worked. When I asked what his hobbies were, he said, nothing. Played drums when I was a real little boy. That's his whole story. I wanted to learn about my mother. He says she got tough after prison. He told me that my mother was at some kind of zone where they sat all day handcuffed for half a year at a time and only lay down to sleep. Sounds like unreal horror. After that, it's hard not to become hardened. They communicated with each other a lot, actually. She came over periodically to spend the night. That's it. After this story, my anger at grandmother miraculously transformed into gratitude, because I understood what I became is truly the best possible outcome. Yes, I paid a high price for it, and only I know that price. Yes, I still want to understand the laws of the universe, why prices are different for different people, why destinies unfold the way they do. No, I don't judge Vladimir. I feel calm and indifference toward his fate. He told all of this during the conversation, but didn't ask a single question about me. Not one. He has my Skype, and he never showed the slightest interest in getting to know me. On International Women's Day, 2 months after our conversation, he sent me, "Daughter, happy holiday. You are my one good one anyway. I love you." I felt sarcasm. With a life like that, I'd also be happy to have a worthy daughter. But I'm angry. Strong indignation. He did nothing to earn this. Didn't show even a millimeter of interest in me. He can consider himself a father. But a daughter is not someone who called once. A daughter is someone you raise. And he didn't raise anyone. Shockingly achieved nothing. Such a worthless life. And in my indignation, I hear my own engine. I'm running from this. running with all my might, because stopping means becoming like him. I want to find a way to respect him. I found respect and love for my mother when I became a mother myself, plus tons of therapy and work. I understood her choices, her problems, but I don't understand how to understand my father. I know I should respect him and be grateful for my life, but I can't yet. My story ends with completely unpredictable feelings. I was so afraid he was already dead or would reject me, but the ending turned out orthogonal to all my fears. He's alive. He didn't reject me. He's just nothing. He likes the idea of having a daughter, but he's not interested in a real daughter, and he is below my worst expectations of a person. It took me many years to find love and respect for my mother. I hope I'll find my way to my father too, because until I do, I'll keep running, and I'm tired of running. But I found my sister, whom he also abandoned, and we're friends. This story was worth it.